I understand that, yeah.
Okay, I think we'll go ahead and start. It's 5:30, and we want to welcome those of you who are here. We will begin with roll call. It is Thursday, June 7th. We are having a study session, 5:30 p.m. And in attendance tonight, we have Dale Hansen, Business Administrator, Terry Rhodes, Board Member, Jeff Nelson, Board Member, Alan Grunig, Board Member. I'm Kathy Christiansen, Board Member. Roger Pulsifer, Board Member. The Superintendent, Steve Norton, will be coming in about 10 minutes. Randall Bagley, Board Member, and Larry Jepson, Board Member. That's the hardest thing I do each time, is remember everybody's names. And I know them all really well for years and years and years. We will start with the pledge and our mission statement, and Randall is going to lead us in it.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our mission is to educate students for success in a changing world.
Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to our public input, and there is none, so we'll go to our reports agenda, and we will start with the Hope Squad and suicide prevention. And this will be presented by Greg Hudnall. Am I close? Or? Okay, yeah. Okay, Lloyd Berenson will begin.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you for taking the time to let us get on the agenda this evening.
Lloyd, make sure that microphone's on.
There's a button there. Just push it up.
You actually have to turn.
We want everybody out there that's tuned in on this to hear your wonderful voice.
Does that work now? Can you
Yeah.
hear me better now? All right.
Thank you.
Well, again, thank you for letting us come. We've, in recent weeks and months, we've experienced some things that seem to be getting our attention maybe to a higher degree than we've ever experienced before, and that's the risk of life with some of the young people in our schools. And some of the things that we're dealing with in those situations is to try to understand what is the best intervention that would help us as we move forward. And we'd like to try to learn from some things that have happened in some other areas. One of the key words that you'll always hear is doing an intervention with fidelity. And the word fidelity is one that helps us to understand that we have to be very careful how we move forward in such a way that it doesn't promote in any way some of the decisions that individuals may make to take their own life. Having said that, what the health department is hoping to do today is to get on board with the school district, and we plan to do this, as you know, we serve 3 counties, so we plan to do this in each of the school districts within those 3 counties, but do some sort of a prevention intervention. And one of the things that we found is we've looked at the legislature here in the recent past, we see a lot of dollars that are going into what I would call the ambulatory side of dealing with this issue. But very little has been done to really get into the preventive part of this. And this really talks about dealing with social norms, things that happen that are a little different than when you and I went to school. Maybe I went to school a lot earlier than many of you. But I think today kids are faced with different challenges that we really don't quite comprehend or understand. How many of you have heard the poem by Joseph Mullins, Ambulance of the Fence? Anybody heard that? I'm going to pass that out rather than take your time, but in that poem it talks about a community's decision whether they should build a fence around the edge of a cliff or put an ambulance down the valley. And I think what we want to focus on is the importance of building that fence around the cliff so that we can prevent those things that happen once the individual falls and then it requires the ambulance to come and take them away. And so I'll pass that out to you, but our hope is that we would, and I no pun intended, we actually want to introduce Greg here to you and talk a little bit about some things that they've had some great success with down in the Utah County area with regard to Hope Squads and so forth. I think he's actually the author of this. And it's been a great program that we don't have really the time to wait on some of these things until there is a whole bunch of nationally recognized, scientifically based information that we might be able to otherwise rely on. So what can we do in the meantime? And so if we proceed carefully as we move forward in such a way, as I mentioned with Fidelity, then we can hopefully do some things that would help us in these situations. The health department would really like to be a partner with you in this. That's not to say we only focus on the prevention area. We would like to be able to also entertain the idea of helping you. I know that when school counselors get individuals who may be troubled in one way or another, they may not be prepared the way maybe a licensed clinical social worker would be. And there may be some things that the health department could work with you in utilizing some of our LCSW type professionals that could come in and help here and there. But what we're really here to talk about today is, as much as possible, is the preventive part of where we can go from that. And so with that, I'm going to just turn it over to Greg and see if he can just talk to you here for a little bit. I'm going to pass out this poem to you also.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here. Just take a little bit of your time tonight. My name is Greg Hudnall, former high school principal, associate superintendent, Provo School District. Spent 30 plus years, and I actually am still working with them, and I think they're going to force me until I join Alan out on a mission or something like that. So it's been a wonderful opportunity for me. If you look at the statistics, and if you've read the news today, I had numerous phone calls, emails from colleagues across the country with the latest CDC report, Center for Disease Control, talking about the increase. Yesterday we met as a state of Utah task force on suicide at the state mental health substance abuse offices, and interesting enough, our SHARP data is showing the increase, continual increase. But it's not just Utah. Of the 35 states that do SHARP data collecting, they're all showing an increase. And if you had a chance to look at the CDC report today, you see that 49 states have increased dramatically, except for Nevada. I'm not sure why, whether it's the gambling. I serve my mission there, so I can make fun of it, but I'm not sure why. In fact, that's one of the interesting questions. So for us, and I'll talk quickly about Provo. Provo is, at the time when I was a high school principal, 15,000 students, 120,000 residents, and we were averaging 1 to 2 suicides a year. Youngest suicide, 4th grader. Even in the state of Utah, we lost 2 5th graders just a year ago. And so for us, we knew we needed to do something, and I'm so impressed that the health department is willing to step up and lead the charge. It was Provo School District first, and then wrapping those resources around our students. So I'd like to share the model. I'm assuming it has sound. Am I going to have sound? Is that okay? Will it have sound? Yeah? Okay, we'll try it. So this is the model that we created in partnership with Wasatch Mental Health, Brigham Young University, Intermountain Healthcare, and 4th District Juvenile Court.
We are living in a time when suicide is a chronic and an escalating concern. Recent studies have revealed that not only has suicide become one of the leading causes of injury death in America, but also one of the leading causes of death for people between the ages of 15 and 49, surpassing even cancer. Can most suicides be prevented? The answer is yes. Individuals who are contemplating suicide frequently give warning signs of their distress. Circles for Hope uses a comprehensive, holistic, and grassroots approach to community suicide prevention, intervention, and postvention. An African proverb says, "It takes an entire village to raise a child." Hope Squad believes it takes an entire community to save one. Circles for Hope builds community connections by training adults to take an active role in suicide prevention. Community trainings are provided to understand warning signs and who is at risk, how to intervene, and where to go for help. Circles for Hope also creates essential partnerships with the local mental health agency, as irreplaceable resources are provided throughout the community. They are a critical part of a community crisis team, as people from all agencies work together and share information for the public good. Circles for Hope offers school programs and training for staff in suicide prevention, intervention, and postvention. Successful suicide prevention begins with education, and prevention is where the greatest energy should be focused. The goal is to train all school personnel to recognize warning signs, identify someone who needs help, where to access the help, and when to notify family. The schools also implement a peer-to-peer Hope Squad program, where students are nominated to become trained in suicide prevention. The impact of suicide is far-reaching and affects entire communities. When communities, mental health organizations, and schools work together to prevent suicide, the entire community is strengthened. Working together, there's hope that suicide can be prevented. For more information on suicide prevention, intervention, and postvention, visit hopesquad.com.
So that's the community program we put together. And one of the things that we learned early on is that we really wanted to create this community support, creating a common language so that everybody understands the warning signs and who's at risk. Of all deaths, suicide is the most preventable. So once we understand the common language, and we don't care if you're a teacher, a parent, church leader, scout leader, we've trained now about 45,000 individuals across the state. The second part then is the common understanding, how do I intervene? We're afraid to talk about suicide because we think if we talk about it, it's going to give someone the idea. Where the reality is most young people that are struggling have already contemplated or thought about suicide. And then the third piece, which is the most important, and where we're so grateful for this partnership with the health department and others, is the common knowledge of where do I go for help. Parents are in crises, young people are in crisis, and when you have that determined, it's amazing what that does to help relieve that pressure. So we put this model together and started to have some success in our district, but the most important piece that we were missing is peer-to-peer. 7 to 8 out of 10 young people who take their lives will tell a friend, and the friend will never tell an adult. We had a 9th grader come into Provo High School, took his watch off, gave it to his best friend, and he said, "I'm not going to need this after tomorrow." And his friend said, "Wait, your father just gave that to you for Christmas." And then he went on to tell 5 others that he was going to take his life. Not one of those young people told an adult. And the very next day, he took his life. So we went into Timpview High School, 2,100 students, right next to Brigham Young University. It was our ground zero. It was the school that had had more threats, more attempts, and more suicides over the previous 10 years than any other school in our district. We went through every English class and we asked every student, if you were struggling emotionally and needed to talk to someone, list the names of 3 of your peers. And the most amazing thing happened. The same 40 names rose to the top out of 2,100. So we pulled those 40 people together, started teaching them on those circles, but the most important thing that we trained them on is when to go to an adult. And it was so successful. This was 2004. We put them in every school. 13 elementary schools, 3 middle schools, and 3 high schools. Here's the Hope Squad.
Suicide is the 3rd leading cause of death among youth between ages 10 to 19 years old. 4,600 youth are lost to suicide each year. However, most suicides are preventable. Youth who are contemplating suicide frequently give warning signs of their distress. 7 out of 10 will tell a friend or give a warning sign that they are struggling, but many of their friends do not tell an adult. A Hope Squad is a group of students nominated by their peers as good listeners and caring fellow students. They work closely with the local mental health agency. Hope Squad students are taught by the school counselor and advisors on how to recognize suicide warning signs in their peers and provide support. Hope Squad members are trained on how to talk to a fellow struggling student. If the peer needs help, they listen and then try to convince them to go see an adult in the school. If that does not work, they inform a school counselor about their concerns about their peers, so the advisors can contact the student and the parents for additional help and support. Hope Squad members also bring suicide prevention awareness to the entire school by holding an annual Hope Week, where fellow peers are given information about suicide prevention. For more information, please visit.
So here's the interesting thing what the research shows us. 7 out of 10 young people who take their lives will tell that friend. but the friends won't tell an adult, and it's amazing. I've met with these young people after their best friend has taken their life. And when you visit with them, they will share, I didn't want to get my friend in trouble. I didn't want my friend mad at me. I didn't believe my friend was really that serious. So 1999, 2004 is when we put our community model together. If you were to go from 1990 to 1999, you would see 1 to 2 every year. So you could see we had 2 years without any suicides, but it wasn't good enough. But then look what happened after we built the community model and then added the peer-to-peer. We went 9 years without a suicide. That's why we were invited by the White House Center for Disease Control, working with the U.S. Department of Health. We're now in 300 schools in the state of Utah, and we're in about 140 schools in 12 other states in Canada. We cannot prevent every suicide, but it's amazing. Last year, 2,700 young people referred for help and over 300 hospitalized. Questions? First of all, thank you for what you do. I worked with school boards for 30 plus years, so bless you. I was on the city council for 8 years, so I get it. Trust me, I get it.
What happens in the schools where there's a Hope Squad, but someone does commit suicide?
Yeah, you know, when you're number 3 in the nation for suicide, we're number 5 overall, but we're 3rd for youth. We lose kids. I mean, there's just, so last year we had about 23 schools that were Hope Squad schools. We train them to be part of the postvention solution. So we have Hope Squad members that will be in the counseling center with the crisis team, greeting students, peers coming in. We have Hope Squad members that walk through the schools that are identifying young people that are in the bathrooms crying, having a difficult time. It can be difficult, but what we have found is that the students really feel, and it's one of the things that we train and teach them. They meet every month to be trained with the curriculum that's been developed by mental health experts. And we train them that it's not their fault. They cannot prevent every suicide. We train them on self-care. We train them on boundaries. We train them on warning signs. We train them on risk factors, how to reach out to those peers. The #1 suicide prevention program in the world is QPR. They're in 50 states, 40 countries, and they've chosen our model as the school-based model, and all of their curriculum is embedded in our curriculum with our students.
So I guess what I'm trying to get at is, do they feel failure
Sure they do.
when
Yeah.
someone does commit suicide? And so how is that handled?
Yes, so there's no doubt that they do. But here's the thing. If you were to take Hope Squads, and I'll start with this, if you took Hope Squads out of the school and have a suicide, I promise you a high percentage of those kids are feeling a failure. So are the staff, so are the administration, etc. You add the Hope Squad in, we provide additional support, additional attention to those Hope Squad members, building that support. But I've been amazed at the number of young people the last 10 years that have been on the Hope Squads that I've been with after a suicide, because I oversee a crisis team for the state of Utah, and I've responded now to almost 50 youth suicides. I've been amazed at how the young people rise up. They still feel bad, they still have those emotions, but can I tell you, most kids in the school do after a suicide, depending on how close they were to the young person that took their life. So what we try to do is provide additional attention, additional support to them. After every suicide, we have a parent meeting in the evening. We come in and do training. We have the Hope Squad members there. We give information to parents, and then we have experts from the community that are available to answer specific questions to parents and provide help. But the key is engaging the youth, and that's what we do with the Hope Squad members. After a suicide, we engage them to continue providing that support.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
So you said that there's monthly training offered to the Hope Squad members. So would the same person, if they begin on a Hope Squad like as a freshman, do they continue on the Hope Squad through their high school career? And then does the training is it the same every year? So like in January of this year, the same training will be taught in January of the next year?
So our curriculum is set up so that it's designed by mental health experts. So if you go on our website, hopesquad.com, you'll see a list of 3 psychiatrists, a couple of psychologists, 4 practitioners that, LCSWs that specialize in suicide ideation. Our program is in elementary, 4th, 5th, and 6th. The elementary program is set up for anti-bullying, resiliency, and mental health. Our highest rates of bullying go from 5th to 9th grade. Junior high program, it's a 3-year program, and then the high school, and then college, so it's all the way through. It builds on each other, but there are 4 concepts that are always taught every year that our mental health experts require. So it's an open door, so seniors are graduating, freshmen are being nominated. And so once a student is in the Hope Squad, in that school, they stay in. So if they're a 4th grader, they keep it till 6th grade. It's not a guarantee at the next building, but whoever, at junior high, they stay, and then high school all the way through. Yeah.
So are those Hope Squad members chosen by survey of the general student populace?
Yeah, they go through every class and ask, if you were struggling, needed to talk to someone, list the names of 3 of your peers. Our 2 Hope Squad schools that failed last year, one was because it's becoming very popular in Utah, the Hope Squad. Kids are using it for college applications and other things. And so at that school, the principal got beat up by so many parents. We even had therapists write letters saying this would be good for Sally to be on the Hope Squad. So the principal said, anybody can be on it. So they put 140 kids on it, and it destroyed the fidelity, exactly what was spoken about. The power of it is peers. So when I go out and visit the schools and work with the Hope Squads, I'm so impressed because the advisors will say, of my 30 students on the Hope Squad, 15 of them I would have handpicked. You just know by their personalities. But it's the other 15 that surprised me. I would have never picked those kids, Greg. But that's what we want because they represent the geeks, they represent the jocks, they represent the performing arts, the musicians, and other things that way.
So have you developed recommendations of how principals can prevent the 140 person Hope Squad
Yeah, so
that's
this
not
is-
effective?
Having been a principal for 15 years, it's when the nominations are done, principals always have 2 doors. The front door that you come out and greet, the back door that you head out and tell your secretary to please deal with the parent. I mean, we have it in basketball, we have it in cheerleading, we have it with every organized program, and there's just no way to get around it. I wish there were. Some schools, we now have Hope Squads that are classes. I mean, they're actually an elective class, and they are the most successful. And they will have organizations that support the Hope Squad activities. So they may say, hey, Terry, I know you want to be on it. I only have 35 slots. I'm going to have you be in this group to help support all of our activities and everything that we do. So some of the schools are really creative that way. But I'm being honest with you, Terry. It's like any, when I was a principal, I did not want to go to school that day
Right.
when the basketball team was selected.
Right, yeah. We see it over and over.
Yeah,
We
you
get
do.
it.
Yeah, you get it. I mean,
We get it.
so I could tell you it's never a problem. It's a problem.
So what is the cost of this program?
So here's the cool thing. I was invited to present to the United States Surgeon General, and Governor Herbert heard about it, invited me to testify to Utah. When I got done, Pamela Atkins said, we want a Hope Squad in every school. So we got to write the bill, and so we're doing 50 Hope Squads a year. So it's completely funded. It's $500 a year. This year we've raised the secondary to $1,000, and the reason we raised that is because we're gonna, this year, provide all the t-shirts. So we have about 8,000 Hope Squad members across the state of Utah. So we're providing all the t-shirts, and then as we met with Hope Squad members across the state, they've asked for an opportunity to meet with other Hope Squad members, and so we're actually doing 2 or 3 statewide high school conferences where the entire Hope Squad would get to come, that we cover the cost, so there's no charge for it.
Are you saying $500 per district,
Per school.
per school?
Per school, but that's covered. So if you elect to do a Hope Squad, You notify us, we send you an invoice, the invoice goes to the State Office of Education, you get reimbursed for it. So we set it up that way so there's no cost to schools.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
In the, in Governor Herbert's, funding of this program, is there a sunset date for that funding?
No, Representative Steve Eliasson is the sponsor of it with Senator Thatcher, and it is an ongoing commitment to keep it funded.
Okay.
Yeah, we are, and I will tell you this, we've decided this next year we're going to limit it to 300 schools across the state because we've just grown way too fast, and we have about 18 openings. So if you're interested, contact ASAP because the slots are filling up. I know that sounds like a car salesman sales line, and if you like this car, I mean, I'm embarrassed to say that to my colleagues, but that's what it is.
Don't we have 2 schools that already have Hope Squads, so they're already in? Okay. Okay.
We had a meeting earlier with Chad Jensen, for example, and as you know, he has a resource officer in all the schools. And we actually have a meeting with those resource officers and talk a little bit about what are the biggest challenges from your perspective. We talked a little bit about health squads, how it can be done. What we're really hoping to do today, as much as anything, is formalize some sort of a partnership between the school board and the schools so that your support is behind it as we talk to principals and so forth. We know that the sheriff's office is very, very supportive of trying to do something that really can help in any way they can. The health department has some resources in terms of some professionals that we can lend in the event that we identify people. But it's this beginning part where we're helping to create this peer understanding and those social interactions. And there's so many signs today that we used to have, like you may already know this, but we have now in elementary schools, kids who are starting to participate kind of as a classroom. And those kinds of behaviors are not the kinds of behaviors that will lead to positive kinds of things later on. So we identify those behaviors. How do we now intervene? How do we start to do something to those situations? And getting those partnerships in place, that's what we're hoping to formalize.
And can I tell you that those partnerships are the most crucial aspect because it does no good to identify a young person if you don't have these kind of resources. We have 40 partners in Utah County, and they're the ones that save lives. We identify and refer, but it's the experts that save the lives.
Superintendent Norton, can we do that tonight, or is that something we need to discuss as a board? So I don't think we could do it tonight, but we're meeting at a retreat next week where we could put that on the agenda and come to a decision on that. Can't do that? Okay. It would not be next week, it would be the following week at the retreat. We can't do it, but we could at our next board meeting.
Lloyd, what would we need to have in an agreement like that? And Steve, what would we need from our standpoint?
I don't think he heard you.
Steve, what would we need for an agreement from our standpoint?
Well, I don't think it has to be anything really formal, but it'd probably be nice to have something written down.
And Superintendent Norton knows, I think one of the things we're looking for is, as a board and as a superintendent and so forth, once you've decided that you are in support of something, it's going to carry a whole lot more weight than we're just trying to come into the schools and do things. So we need to make sure we're just going through the appropriate channel. How formal that relationship is, I don't know, but it really, we all need to talk the same language, we all need to identify ourselves as partners in this process.
We'll work something.
Okay,
Um,
all right.
At the risk of sounding unfeeling, our main purpose in the school district is educating students. not prevent, I mean, I hate to even say this out loud, but our main focus is educating the over 17,000 students that we have. And preventing suicide is important, but it can't supplant, I mean, any agreement cannot supplant what our main focus is.
Lloyd, I need to have you come over to the microphone.
I feel like we're taking too much of your time, so I apologize. But that particular issue, you're right on. That is that's the core reason it exists. That's why the schools are in place. One thing that's different today that has not existed in years past is that what used to be done, I'm going to be really frank with you, what used to be handled in the home is no longer being done. Whether you like it or not, you have inherited an issue that is chronic and is going to continue and get worse. If we simply say we're just going to educate, I think that we are not doing justice to the total person that's coming through that system who we've been entrusted with. Now, I'm saying we, I'm talking really about you. I'm talking more from a health department standpoint, from a preventive standpoint. I feel like we have a responsibility to these young people and adults who are going through crisis and so forth. So, yes, I absolutely recognize that you are right on this is your main mission and so forth. But unfortunately, now you've inherited something that's right in your laps, that they are spending so much of their social interactions, so much of the way they think and do things, that environment controls how they feel and everything about that student. That's how they identify themselves. And so I think we have to now try and do something to help. We're not asking the school to try and take and bring all kinds of resources into it, but we are asking you to let us through the door, create a partnership so that we can become active in trying to do some things. So.
Okay. Anything else? All right, thank you very much. Appreciate the presentation. And we will move forward and get back with you.
You can stick around for the budget discussion if you'd like.
Okay, we'll go ahead and move forward then on the negotiation agreements with CEA, classified and administrator groups.
Did you get your jump drive, Bree?
Yeah, Kirk McCray asked if I would cover these issues here,
Okay,
these items. Just want to report that we had excellent negotiations with our employees this year, and we had several board members on our negotiation team, which I think you can help, attest to the good relationships that exist out there. With the appropriations from the legislature for next year, again, we were able to, I think, provide a good increase in salaries and benefits for our employees. And so when we've met, the base package is basically the same for all three groups. And that would be then, as we explained, I think, last time, that we're able to provide a 3.5% cost of living increase on the salary schedule. And then the legislature had also provided additional funding that for 1 year is classified as unrestricted. They say the funding will be ongoing, but it will probably only be unrestricted for this 1 year, and then they will change the parameters around how the funds can be used and who will control it. And so that made it difficult for us to do anything long-term with those funds because we'll only have 1 year access to those. And so the agreement then is that we would actually, as this was intended basically as additional cost of living increase, but it's only one time, so it'll be a 1.5% salary augmentation, just one time, that would be paid out in a separate payroll, probably in November is what we're anticipating right now. And again, that would be shared with all employee groups. The third item is with our self-funded health and accident insurance benefits. It's agreed that, that we would actually increase the premiums on that program 8% for next year above the premiums this year. Again, being self-insured, and we're just in the very infancy of that, we want to be very careful that we don't try to ride the line so close that we get ourselves in trouble. But the recommendation from GBS, who is our broker and guide in helping us make these decisions, has recommended that we have somewhere between a 2 and a 12% increase. So they don't tell you exactly what your premium will be because they don't insure you. We hold the liability here, but they give you a range, and so it was decided amongst the groups that they would recommend an 8% increase, and that's what's built into the package here. So the only other thing that is different between any of the three groups and those three items is that with the teachers, well, I should say all of those two. There's one other thing with the health and accident insurance is that in the past, employees who have opted to take the traditional health plan, which has a higher cost than our high deductible plan, has been contributing 8.6% of the premium for that. But as we look at it, the costs are much greater for that group than is the high deductible plan. And so again, as the committees evaluated that, it was proposed and been accepted here that we increase that premium share up to 15% rather than 8.6%. And so that's built into this settlement. And the other thing had to do with Tier 4 formulary drugs. So those are your real high expensive drugs that in the past there's been a $100 copay arrangement for purchasing those items, and this is going to be changed now so that it will be a co-insurance type arrangement. And so there's a percentage being paid, but it's capped that the employee at the maximum would pay $200 for those prescriptions. And the one thing is this would not accumulate towards their deductible, but would toward their total out-of-pocket maximum in their benefit side. So there's that. Steps and lanes would be approved or covered by the district. And then also with the retirement and hiring policy the district has, there's a change in there. There's two real changes. One of them had to do with notification of openings, and so it was in the past, it was an arrangement where we were having to send emails out individually to everyone who had any interest in some type of change. And so it was kind of a blanket group that we would have to flood all these emails to, and it was very difficult to make sure that everyone is getting included in those. And so it was agreed that we would cancel that type of arrangement, but actually set it up where it says that the district will post vacant and open positions in each school electronically and via hard copies. And so the notifications would actually go out to each of the individual schools, and they could post them in their faculty lounges or wherever. And so there would be a hard copy there, and again, the electronic copy would, I think, go out to everyone like we can, but it goes to everyone, not just a select group. And then the other thing had to do with, in the past, there was an arrangement where teachers applying for a position within our district were given up to a maximum of a 5% or 5-point advantage out of a total of, I believe it was 30 points, if I remember right, in the evaluation process, in the scoring of that. And so it was giving our employees very heavy waiting in preference of a district opening. And I don't remember all the justification behind this, as Kirk had explained this, but it was agreed with CEA that we would eliminate that policy or arrangement so that everyone actually is operating on an equal playing field in the employment or the hiring process. So that was pushed through. With the classified employees, one of their interests was trying to have more professional development opportunities that they could participate in. And so the agreed policy change here is it says the district will work with school administration and program supervisors to ensure that the Cache Educational Support professional staff are able to participate in necessary professional development and training. Any required employment training will be on the clock or compensated time, including required Bridge electronic training. So Bridge is kind of a district-wide computerized training system that we have that we can monitor who has actually received the training, and it's very effective in getting that out to all of our employees. So that will help, and any type of that training should be on the clock with the way the labor laws work on that anyway. They were looking for help in getting substitutes to cover them for the classified employees because they find it very difficult many times to find people for that. We didn't say we would take that over completely, but we said here the district and the education support staff will use best efforts and a coordinating approach to help find and recruit substitutes for CESP staff who need to take necessary leave. So it's really trying to get the schools, and many of the schools had expressed methods they had used to develop lists of people in their in their community area or school area that have desires to help with certain positions on a short-term basis or whatever. So if they can kind of develop that list early, that's very helpful rather than somebody just out of the cold trying to call anyone and everyone to see who could come and take their position because they've got to be gone for some emergency that's come up. And so those were really the only changes. There wasn't anything different with the Administrators Association. It was strictly those three main items. And so those, well, one thing I would say too is that each of the employee groups had phenomenal support in favor of accepting the negotiated agreement. I think they said CEA came in at like 95% of their members in favor of the settlement, which generally we know that in any question there's usually at least 20% that's going to vote against anything regardless of what it is. So 95% is excellent. And so the same type of experience was recognized with the other groups. So really our relationships are as good as they've ever been, I think, with our employees. And I think as long as we continue to try to treat them fairly and as best we can, they've recognized that and are very supportive of what we do. So.
Any questions?
So we're not asking for a vote tonight.
Yeah.
But that would give you a background as to what.
Thanks to you and Kirk for working with that group because it was really smooth. And I appreciate that you listen to what they have to say and try to work it out so that it will be as much as possible what they would like to have done, but also works within our district. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next.
I'll take this too.
All right. Yeah, I'm not really sure what this is.
In fact, I'll take
All of them.
4 of them here.
Yeah,
pretty
just
much.
go right ahead. Continue.
This one was one that kind of came out of the blue. The State Treasurer's Office is requiring that each school district or public entity that participates in the Public Treasurer's Investment Fund have a resolution approved which designates which individuals in the district or the community or whoever it is can act in behalf of, in our case, the school district in doing transactions with the treasurer's pool. And so the wording in here is basically defining that, and this would be asking that the board president actually certifies that the following are authorized to bank accounts tied to the PTIF accounts, to open or close PTIF accounts, and to execute any necessary forms in connections with such changes on behalf of the Cache County School District. And so we would be listing, in this case, myself and Scott Rigby, which we've been the ones who really have had any contact with them in any of the transactions for the district. But they want to have that in a formal resolution, and so I know the resolution should be on your packet, or at least on the board docs agenda there for you to review, but we would need to bring that to you next time for action to formally approve that if we can.
Okay. Any questions on that? All right, let's go ahead and do the final legal budget.
Okay. You will have in board docs then what is the proposed final legal budget for the 2017-18 school year. It'll be ending here at the end of this month. This budget is the one that we are bound by as a school district when audits are conducted, to make sure we're in compliance with all the requirements that we have financially as a school district. And so the presentation there has 4 different columns. The column in blue is the preliminary budget that was approved by the board last June, that began this school year. The adjusted column there is what we're proposing as the final legal budget. And then there's a column showing the difference in the adopted versus the adjusted and the percentage change in those 2 presentations. So it's broken out, first looking at revenue, and it looks at one fund at a time, just on the revenue side. And you can see that in the general fund on the first page, the largest change there has to do with our balance brought forward, so that when we build a budget, we don't try to anticipate all of the individual restricted programs carryover balances. We give the program directors an option to prepare an estimate if they would like, but it doesn't always come in exactly as they think. So you can see there's actually a $7.1 million difference. The largest share of that was our unappropriated fund balance, which we, again, is one-time money that we don't try to build that in this ongoing budget here. That's where basically the funding came to purchase the new district office that we'll be moving into. And the balance of it is in restricted programs. So those are the main changes there. Down in the state funding, the changes come from 2 different fashions. One is the carryover balance from the prior year in that funding line item will be augmented from what the initial allocation of new funding is that comes from the state. And then the other is that a lot of the funding formulas are based on student enrollment. And so when we have our October 1 count, it's partway into this year, before we receive it, those numbers all adjust our state funding estimates and amounts. So those all numbers usually get changed around December or so each year, as all of the audited figures and the October 1 audit are all received and computed by the state office. So you can see there's $5.3 million of state funding that came in and as additional amounts. Federal funds, again, we're looking where there have been reductions in state funding over the last 2 years, and so those amounts are actually, they've gone down. But again, here this biggest part would be carryover balances from prior years of unfunded unexpended allocations of prior years that carry forward. So all in all, in the general fund, we're at $14.5 million of additional revenue. Half of that is carryover balances, the rest of it's tied up into ongoing funding. Very little change in the student activity fund or the debt service fund. Most of the debt service, the only change there would have been what our actual carryover balance was, and I think we missed it by $300,000, which is very, very close. Capital outlay went the other direction. We overestimated what the carryover balance was going to be, trying to figure the timing of what claims were coming in at the end of the year on all of our construction projects. We were actually about $5.5 million over in our estimate in the initial budget, so that came back in line with the audited figures. And that's really the only change in that. And food service, again, it was carryover balance is the only change in there. So in each of those funds, as a program director has increased funding or carryover amounts that come into the new year, they will reallocate on their expenditure side how those funds will be used. It varies by every program as to what their focus is and needs, but all of those will be recognized then on the expenditure side. If you do go to the very last page, you can, well, no, it's not in this, it's on the other budget presentation. It's going to show where, but if you compare the totals by fund on the revenue side, they'll match exactly the same on the expenditure side by fund, because we have to budget to expend all of the funds that we have. Whether we actually do or not, that's the rest of the story. But our budget is required to be built to expend all of the funds. Things like the undistributed reserve, that is a reserve that is set aside and has hard restrictions as to how and when it can be used. But most of them are just tied to ongoing funds. So that would be the final legal budget that we would present to the board next time and ask for approval.
Okay. Question? Okay.
Thank you.
All right, and their proposed budget for the next school year.
I'm gonna keep the agenda up here with me. There we go. Okay, the last board meeting, I reviewed with you the revenue estimates that we have anticipated for this new year, showing where the legislature increased the value of the weighted pupil unit 2.5%, and that we had the one-time funding out at the very bottom of that very front page. This is the one that's called discretionary general fund revenue comparison. And so this is looking at this current year's unrestricted or discretionary funding compared to our estimates for next year. And so in state funding in total, where we actually are getting better increases in the equalization bills than just the 2.5% increase, it provides just under $3.5 million of increased discretionary funding, which is just over 4% increase over what we had this year. And so that's the Reader's Digest version of that part. Behind that, there's also a detailed listing of how we build our estimates on each of those categories or line items for the new year, showing projected enrollments and whatnot for the new year in comparison to other years. That one, again, if you have any interest, want some explanation on that, I'll be glad to go through with that with you. But the main thing we would have is the last two presentations. One is called the General Budget Worksheet, and that's one where we then look at all of the discretionary revenue that matches, again, the revenue estimates on that first sheet, and shows how they have actually been spent for the last 3 years, what this year's budget is, which is the same as that final well, final legal budget of just the discretionary funds. And then what is being proposed in next year's budget of how each of those line items would be funded for next year. The main increases we have in there, again, are cost of living increases, the increase in insurance, and we did increase, what was it, Mike, 2.5 counseling positions, I believe, across the district. There's one secondary counseling position that was needed to meet the accreditation requirement standards. That was at Green Canyon. And then the others were at the elementary level, where this does complete then with every elementary next year. Every elementary school will have a half-time counselor serving in their school area. So that's kind of
I have a question,
Sure.
especially after our hearing or having the discussion about suicide and hope squads and all that stuff. In the high schools, the counselors are traditionally guidance counselors, so for academic guidance. In the elementaries, what type of counselors are they?
All counselors are trained counselors.
Right, they're all
The
trained
function,
counselors.
and it's happened on the secondary level is a result of the state saying that that's where counselors ought to spend their time. Okay, so they're all trained to be facilitators, they're trained in counseling skills to handle mental health issues. They're trained to do all that, but the Utah model on the secondary level just has moved them into academic counseling. So depending on where they got their degree, and I don't know of a place, any university that I know of that doesn't train counselors to be counselors, not academic advisors, okay? So the elementary counselors, many of them went through the same training program that our secondary counselors, but they haven't been shoeboxed into a role that we say that's just what you need to do.
Okay, thank you.
And the high school and middle school do a lot of scheduling, right, too, which?
Yeah, they have actual, their day is actually
Percentage of
percentages,
time.
yeah, and most of it has nothing to do with helping kids get through
Yeah.
life,
How do we
except for
change
the
that?
academic portion.
Yeah, how do we change that?
You're gonna have to change the model that the state of Utah has adopted.
Is it the state school board, Board of Education?
Yeah,
Does
that's
that?
where it would've.
That's where it is.
Yeah.
I wonder why they don't
And,
see that
well,
flaw in that.
And then we had the same discussion down at the JLC meeting, and I had to make some comments there too, because Susan Polson, who used to be a board member, and there's a tremendous interest in counseling, but when she went to state law, she said she couldn't find anything in code about how counselors are trained or how they get licensed or any of that. And so I just asked, well, what are we trying to code here? Universities train counselors just like they train every other person who goes through the system. So it's an area that we've got to pay particular attention to, because if we get pigeonholed with our elementary counselors too, that they have to have this kind of certain training and they can only deal with these kind of issues, then I think we're missing the boat, because they should be the only person who really is that we pay in our school system, who deals in the academic and mind area, that doesn't have to make a judgment call on kids. They don't have to grade them, they don't have to sort them, they don't have to do anything. They're just there to help kids. And we've got to get that refocused back, that the kid's in emotional turmoil, he's not gonna be any good in the classroom, but we can expect that the parents are gonna be the ones who are gonna take that kid somewhere to get the help he needs. So our counselors should be our first line of defense for that. And I think they are doing that on the elementary level in this district. secondary level, I think we've got to convince the state that model right now, with the amount of turmoil we have in kids' lives, might need to be modified so that we don't spend so much time on just academic advisement.
Well, I agree with that myself. Oh. Okay.
Yeah, I would just mention then, that so the last report that we'll have then will be what is the proposed budget for next year. And there's a couple things in here that you might notice. If you look at the very first page there on property taxes in the general fund, it looks like we would be going from $18.8 million this year down to just under $5 million. Taxpayers would love that, but that's really not the case. We're still waiting for numbers from the state tax, or from the State Tax Commission and the county auditor's office, that will allow us to set the actual rates. A lot of the funding we receive with the property taxes that we have are tied into equalization formulas. Like the basic levy is a rate that has to be set, that every district in the state will levy, and so we'll generate X number of dollars from property taxes by whatever that rate generates, and the state will subsidize the balance to bring our total funding up to the guaranteed value of the weighted per pupil unit. So I haven't built any property taxes in here. I've just shown what the total funding will be for us, and that's down in the state funding side. But when we do get the numbers on property taxes, we'll shift part of that funding back up under the property tax line item. Same goes with the voted leeway and the board leeway. So none of those presentations show any of the property taxes recognized here. But I did actually get some preliminary numbers today from the county. It doesn't have all the information I need to be able to set the rates, but from my best guess right now is that our tax rate is going to go down about 5% over what it is this year, just because of the growth in the county itself. It's not new growth coming into the valley, but it's more like reappraisals of properties, so that the system is built that if the value of property goes up, that's previously been on the tax rolls itself, that increase shouldn't generate additional funding for the entity. They don't let you capture inflationary funding. So you have to lower your tax rate so it generates then still the same number of dollars that they would have paid the prior year. But the one thing we will have is this will be the 5th year with our voted leeway having floated that rate down each year as we've had increase in assessed value. And next year will be not this coming year, but the 2020 school year will be when we've got to go back to the public and raise that property tax rate clear up to the full maximum authorized amount that the voters said we could initially, to qualify then for the guaranteed level. Otherwise, we'll lose both local and state funding if we don't renew that tax rate at least every 5 years.
So was it the basic rate that was only a floor was set on with the last legislative session?
Yes, yeah.
So just the basic rate, not the local or, not the board or local voted, or voted, sorry.
Yeah,
board
neither
or
the board or
voted.
the voted were
Just the
protected
basic
on that.
rate, okay.
So that's one. And some districts who don't qualify for the state subsidy, they will keep raising their tax rate up to that maximum every year. Usually districts, Logan's done that quite often, where they raise their taxes every year. But for us, we get the same funding. If we raised our property tax back up, we'd just get less state subsidy. And so, you know, if voters understand it correctly, we're actually keeping their property taxes down during that 5-year period, because we'll just make up the difference in state subsidy. But we do have to bring it back every 5 years to keep that same qualifying level of state subsidy. before. So that'll be an issue next year. And so I think it was looking at the rate being like a 00135 for next year is about where it'll be for the voted leeway. And we'll have to raise that up to a 0016, which should be, people will notice that. But I hope they realize that we've been helping them for 5 years.
We've been helping
keeping
them
that
save up
down.
for it.
They don't.
Yeah, they won't, but in reality, that's where that is. So this presentation here with the budget then again shows the actual expenditures and revenues for the 2016-17 year, the final legal budget that I presented here for the 17-18 year, and the proposed budget for the 18-19 year. Again, the big changes in here. On page 2, you can see the $1.7 million increase in the flexible allocation. That's that one-time funding that would be paying the 1.5% salary augmentation to our employees. The vote and board leeways funding went up about 8% over what we had before. But this shows, again, both the local and the state revenue all in one number, so it looks like a real big increase. And one other nice change has been on the capital equalization funding that we have. So on page 5, the revenue side of capital outlay, we'll pick up an extra $675,000 of capital equalization funding over what we had this year, which right now that'll put us up at $3.8 million a year that we're receiving in capital equalization. There was
Back to where we were high.
yeah, wasn't too
Under
long ago, we
one-time
got
funding.
$50,000, I think it was, or it was next to nothing. But, so we're almost back up to, the 4.2 million or so we had at one time. And then the reserves that are built up in here, this still maintains the undistributed reserve to $2.5 million. Still the $30,000 deductible on our fire insurance that we have as a little reserve. And then there's about $173,000 reserve or accumulated value for our operations with the rec center at Skyview together with Smithfield City. So we do the financing of that, but the replacing of the air handling systems and the multipurpose flooring and all other kind of things that have to go on. It's set up to a ratio of where Smithfield City covers 35% and we cover 65%. But that funding that we generate each year stays in reserve, anticipating those kind of costs coming up. And then on the capital outlay side, there is a $750,000 reserve for the demolition of the old Wellsville Elementary. And then we're also putting money aside now for the replacement of the turf fields at the 4 high schools. In the past, we were putting money aside for band uniforms so that every 10 years, one of the high schools would get new band uniforms. And so with 2, we were just purchasing them once every 5 years. But now with those turf fields, actually have come to the agreement now that we will cover the cost of the turf fields. They'll cover the cost of their band uniform. And so we, for example, we're just replacing Mountain Crest and Skyview's fields right now. And that came in at about $730,000, I think, for those 2. So it's about $1.4 million or more, 1.5, that would have to accumulate. And I think the duration of those fields right now, they're estimating around 13 to 15 years. And so we're up now, we're just starting, we're at 209 million, I think, or 209,000 that we've started in the reserve, 203,000.
So is that supposed to be safer than just sod?
Nope, I'm on the wrong one, sorry.
Is that why we did that?
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
The turf is safer than sod, or what was the reason for going to that?
Yes, the artificial turf itself wears out, partly from,
But her question is,
Oh.
why do we go to artificial turf? from
Instead of
regular
just using grass?
Because it's cool.
because it's cool.
Oh, really?
No. No, It was.
We also don't have to water it, which in a desert state is a big deal.
That is a big deal.
And in the wintertime, or in the springtime, we have a hard time getting rid of the snow. We're usually about 3 weeks behind the rest of the Wasatch Front as to when they see green grass. And so this also has allowed them to be able to push the snow off of the field and have it playable
And
there
play on
early
it.
in the spring. So
Not mud.
that's helped, but
Gotcha.
I sure remember going to football games and by the end of the season, right through the middle of the field, pretty much just mud. Hell,
The good old days. Okay,
anyway, that's kind of it, unless you have any questions or.
yeah. Any questions on it? Yeah, it looks great. Glad you have to do this part, and I don't have to. Thank you. Okay. Where are we? Okay, the board meeting schedule. We'll approve this at our meeting on the 21st. If you look at, there's a couple of places where there's questions. Is the board summer party okay on July 19th after that meeting?
I'm not gonna be here.
Okay. Well, we might just have to check.
Yeah, it's,
I don't think you were here last year.
yeah, ended up being reunions at
Oh.
that time, so,
Okay, I'm sorry.
no, it's okay.
All right, and then, okay, the fall break, or in October, the meetings are the 4th and the 25th because of fall break. December 6th is we usually just do one meeting in December, right? So we
Yes.
wouldn't have the December 20th?
No, not generally. We put it in just in case we have to have it.
Should we just leave it and then decide?
Just leave it and cancel it.
Okay, okay. And then the board Christmas party, is that okay on December 6th? Check your calendars. Or put it down so it doesn't conflict with anything. January 3rd, and that one actually works out with USBA, with the 1st and 3rd. And then in April, on the 11th, we have spring break, April the 1st through the 5th, so our first meeting would be on the 11th, and then the 25th. So just check your calendars before we have our next meeting and see if you have any questions or concerns. Let me know if you do. And let's move on to the board president report. Okay, so when I passed out a paper and had you write down things that you wanted to know more about, one of the questions that came back is, how can or should I be involved in my district? And Larry, this was your question that you had down, and I was thinking you probably meant in your precinct with your schools. Is that what you meant?
Basically.
Okay, so in our handbook, has everybody had a chance to read this, so I don't have to go through it? All right, any questions or discussions, or do you want more information on what is required as far as attending things in your precinct? It's pretty flexible, actually, so.
And it should be.
Yeah, because some people have more time than others, and if you are interested and you can, then attend whatever. And the superintendent gave us permission to just call the principals and organize this ourselves when we want to go into schools. The one thing I kind of wondered about is we never do visit classrooms except when we went with the legislatures, which is really pretty fun to do that. So if we do that again, that kind of covers that. Did you like that idea of going with the legislators into the schools?
Oh, yeah.
Remember, in October? Is that something you'd like us to arrange for this next year? We'll have a few legislators that are gonna be gone.
Yeah.
We'll have mostly new legislators.
Will
Yeah,
we have new ones by then?
Yeah. Well, no, but we will know who they are.
Okay, so we could invite them. Okay, yeah.
That-
Well, not in October we won't, because
No,
that would
because-
be before the election.
We'll know who the two are. And
Can we invite both of them?
And the political party that usually sends them.
But maybe we should invite both,
Sure we should.
so they both can go into the classroom before they go to a session, or whomever. Does that sound good? Okay,
And some
will you
of
be
them
on that?
might- Some of them might be running unopposed too,
Ah, yeah,
after primaries.
okay. Well, last year, it was our district that was in charge of that luncheon. It'll be Logan, but Carolyn, I think, did a lot of work on organizing that. And so if she needs any help, or with me contacting somebody, I'm happy to do that.
Okay.
Okay? All right, and then, okay, we have kind of put a tentative schedule out for the, meeting, the retreat. We have that from superintendent. And, the date on here is actually wrong. It's not July 19th. This is for the retreat. And this list of things to discuss comes from the one sheet that I had you mark what you were interested in, learning more about. Did you get one? Okay.
So the date on that, is that in 2 weeks, our retreat?
No, that is next week.
Next week, okay.
Next week. So let's just quickly look over this and see if you're on board with all of these, or you want to add something
Okay, hold on.
different.
Kathy, let me just make sure that, so the date is
June 14th.
June
June
14th.
14th, okay. Yeah.
All right, so,
Well, this paper says July.
so you can change the date on your paper. This is for next week,
Okay, June 14th.
okay? And just, we will meet at 5:30 and there will be dinner. So I told, or I asked Carolyn if she would just order pizzas. Does that sound okay with everybody? That's really easy to do when everybody seemed to like that last time we had it. Okay, so superintendent, business administrators, evaluations and goals, and we probably would just have you two tell us what your goal is based on the information you got from the evaluations. Are you both good with that? Okay. Evaluation of the 2017-18 goals to see if we accomplished what we said we were going to, and then adjust them or set new ones if we need to. Everybody okay with that? Report on the capital outlay goals for the 2018-19. That would be Bruce. Would he have something to report by then?
It won't necessarily be Bruce, but we'll have something
Something.
to report.
Okay, so we're good on that one. Board responsibilities for school community council training and school land trust plans. This one got the most votes, Mike. So we're feeling unprepared, I think, on what we're supposed to be doing. I wrote down a couple of things, maybe touch on two of the things that we're supposed to pass on to the committees, which is information on parent. What are the parent responsibilities that we should be making sure or checking with on that committee? What are the voting rules that the principals should have in place? Although most of the principals have told me in my precinct that they don't have enough people to vote on, they just have to make assignments. But you want to make any comments on that at all? Should we worry about it? Okay, so we should give them. Okay, so will you just kind of fill us in on that? Are you okay to come to this meeting? It's the next one for you. Okay, thanks. How can we work, this was brought up, how can we work with the principals without coming across bossy and overbearing, like on their school plans? If you have any suggestions on that. And then you said we probably will need a new rubric. Should we just wait for that till later? Okay, and then just some help maybe on what's changed in the state now on how they are evaluating those plans, so we have that information. Okay.
Like the things we missed this time?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the part I was interested in.
Well, he said they changed a lot of things this time, so don't anybody beat yourself up over
Well,
this.
yeah, I scrutinized, that was pretty heavy.
Yeah, we did, yeah, we did. Okay, so thank you, Mike, on that one. And then the parent university, should we move forward with that, and what should we do? Will you kind of
Yeah,
take that one?
yep.
Okay, report on how FTEs are distributed. I think this was your, okay, Dale, you want to do that, but Terry had the question. Do you have the information, Terry, or do you want?
I don't have the information.
Will you do that then?
Yeah, I can show how we do that.
Okay, okay. And then report on the levels of property taxes, like, Terry, help me out here.
Yeah,
Proper-
the differences in just
Business.
the difference, you can just give us a paper on that. That just shows the differences in the different types of property tax and the levels that they're taxed at.
I think that'd be helpful for all of us if we had questions about it.
Well,
Okay.
that's why he can just give us a paper and we
Yeah.
can look at it and say, okay, we get that, or wait, I have a question.
Okay. And then a report on the options for teacher certification, so we know that. Steve, would that be you?
Probably Kirk.
Okay. Do you think he'll be okay
Okay.
with that?
Yeah, if he won't, then we'll Garrett.
Okay. So is there anything else that's?
Yeah, there's one that I've been racking my brain because I couldn't remember today what it was, but we need to have a discussion on growth, future buildings, and funding.
Okay. I remember you saying we put that down.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we'll just add that. We have a lot.
An all-nighter?
Yeah.
I need a sleeping
No,
bag.
we're
and
not gonna do
sleeping
it all
pad.
night.
Okay.
No.
Well, he might just be preparing us for what is to come.
Yeah,
Because we've
yeah.
got a ton of growth. Okay.
Well, several of these could just be done with a piece of paper report, like the
Yeah.
FTE thing or the property tax thing, and then we could just ask questions if we have any.
Okay. Are you good with that? Okay. All right. Thank you, and we'll turn the time over to you, Superintendent.
Okay. I want you to know I had built an extra half hour into travel, so I would have been here on time, except that they started talking about equalization down there. And I just couldn't leave with the statements that were being made, so that's why I was late, and I apologize.
No apology
But
needed.
a couple of statements, and some of them are really close to home. You've got a feeling out there that there were some districts that were hurt because of this last year's equalization. And I think we pretty much had a discussion where they recognized that, well, at least those who were benefited kind of indicated why, what we were trying to accomplish. Now, we didn't want to use WPU money, and they did end up using some of that to equalize this last year. The year we got equalized, Senator Osmond's bill, it came from property tax levied against the whole state. And so nobody could make a case that they didn't get money that they were supposed to get, because they never were gonna get it. It was designated towards districts like us. Little bit of feelings for the 10 districts that benefited this year. There was a general feeling from the districts that didn't receive equalization money in either bill, that now we can start talking about other areas to equalize. And they started talking about like things like the cost of living. And we ought to adjust how much money a district gets by how much it costs to live in a particular area.
No.
And,
Wow.
And that just was boggling to me, and so we kind of had to have a discussion again about, we were trying to do with equalization, was those districts that raise money, and we all do through taxation, we were trying to just make it equal, that if we put a levy on, it would raise at least the average amount of money that people get across the state when they put the same levy on. We'll never catch the Park Cities and the Salt Lakes and all that. That's not the intent. So they just get all caught up in a realization that they think we got money that they didn't get.
It's
And what they
always
don't realize.
frustrating in those conversations when they start talking about winners and losers,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not about winners and
No.
losers.
And what it basically is about is just getting everybody to an equal playing field. And so there were districts like Tooele Box Elder, I think, was a big winner in this last one. And it just basically brought us up to where they've been for years. So I told them, I said, for 18 years, folks, I couldn't give the kind of raises that you gave across the state to my teachers. The last 4 years, I've been able to be competitive with you, but for 18, I was not. So I'm just now a bona fide member of your group, and I do thank you, but nobody got hurt because of what happened to us. We just got brought up to your level. So that's what kept me from leaving the meeting. So anyway, those issues. But, so just a couple of items. AG's office is taking the lead in the suit that was filed against our district. So,
Is this the cheerleader?
yeah.
Okay.
The Title IX complaint that came along with that suit, to the OCR, just gotta come back to this board, because that's an administrative, pathway to get to the court. They've gotta go through everything administratively, and they haven't been here to present their case. So that's why we're not telling you much about anything. I don't know where we're gonna go, but the AG's office is carrying the brunt, and I think that's where it should be. Okay, just a couple other items. When the two new schools were opening, I asked them to do two things. One was take their school colors and put it behind glass and frame it and put it in the office, so everybody would know through the years what the school colors were. So that somebody doesn't go into an office and say, well, I think we could change this to this, okay? So there is a nice little thing hanging in the office that shows what the school colors are. Second, I asked them to come up with a history of the first year. So I'm gonna give you a copy of the history. It's a 2-volume set from Ridgeline. If you are not at all interested in it, you can just return it to me and I'll find somebody who is. But even if you're just mildly interested in it, you probably ought to write in it somewhere, upon my death, if the children are not interested in this book, please return it to the district office or to Ridgeline High, because they will become, over time, very valuable resources. So I'm going to give you a copy, each of you a copy of each volume of that. And this was done basically by, who was the main force? Yeah, Kayleen Harris. Did we get enough green ones?
Here's,
You should have a green one, and then I'm gonna give you a blue one.
Okay, he needs
I
green.
need a green.
And
Green.
so does,
No, here, Randall already got
Randall.
his.
Okay, now we're going blue.
okay.
I don't think I've got enough blue here, though. Maybe not, but I've got more.
Okay.
So, has everybody got one?
You got one?
Don't pass them to Dale. So, okay.
Okay.
Second is, your board president wanted you to continue your professional development by reading this book, Creating the Schools Our Children Need. And so if you want to say anything about them as I...
Just that about, this is what I talked about when I did my little thing about the San Antonio conference. He agrees with all of the studies to back him up, about 95% with what our district is doing, but there's some interesting ideas.
Yeah, Dale needs to get one.
Okay, there's some interesting
He
ideas.
needs to understand what we're doing.
Yeah. So if any of you are working on your MBA, one of the things that it asks is that you read a book, and this could be your book. It really is pretty interesting, and I took it to the beauty parlor when I got my hair cut and had my yellow marker, and the guy cutting my hair said, how do you even know what's important when you underline everything? So,
Well, how
anyway.
did you find a guy in this valley to do your hair? That's
Do
what,
my hair? I don't know, I just knew him.
where is he?
Serendipity Salon.
Oh.
Yeah, he does women's hair.
Okay.
So anyway, if we needs some more training, I might choose a section of it, or you can suggest a section, and we'll talk about it
Okay.
during the year. So, okay?
Thanks again for all the time during graduation week.
It was fun.
That's a fun time. And also the party, if you were able to make it. That was, I love going home just smelling greasy as greasy, and takes about a day and a half to get it all out of the system.
I think that lightning special effect was the best part of it, though.
Oh, that was awesome.
Yeah.
The lightning, yeah.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
so fun to watch the band director's face.
Yeah.
It was like, who hit that drum? What, he wasn't sure what the band had done to create that noise.
Bob Hinkey has a piece of the tree
Oh,
on his desk, somebody brought him.
oh, that's awesome.
That's good.
Yeah, that is awesome.
Yeah, they ought to put a little, they ought to make that a permanent part of the,
Celebration.
yeah.
So, for next Thursday, would you like to ask the district officers who are
I
coming
will.
to help us?
Yep,
To
yep.
come for the pizza, and we'll put them first,
Yeah.
also on the agenda,
Okay.
so they don't have to stay for everything?
Well, they might as well gut it out.
Okay.
So
Oh,
we'll just-
okay, well, you tell them you said that, not
We'll see how,
I.
we'll see how it works out.
Okay, all right, well, thank you, everyone, appreciate it very much, and thank you, Mike and Jenda, for sticking here with us, appreciate you guys a lot.
Agenda had been a faithful attender.
She has, yeah, she has.
Thanks for the books.
You're welcome,
That's-
yeah.
Okay, and we'll bring this meeting to an end, to a close, thank you.